This is Living L.U.N.A, where we talk about
You just plug it.
loving unashamed and normalizing authenticity.
Yep, this is Safrianna's extraness. Need to plug the label because she's so proud of the acronym.
Is this better?
That is better. You have to feel like a radio host. No, you don't want to be a radio host?
I'm giving a look right now.
Yes, you are.
Is it like a David Rose judgment look?
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, I am David Rose.
You are, yes. You are a personification of David Rose.
So,
even though David Rose is also a person, so why we need to personify him even more.
He's a character.
Yes.
Not a person.
True. Anyway, tangents.
Anyway, that's going to be this entire podcast. It's just us tangenting.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the cool thing is that, like, you know, neurotypical people are like, we need to stay on focus for blah, 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 blah.
Well, welcome to the not focused show. Because we have no notes in front of us right now because this is just us talking into microphones right now.
Yep. Are we supposed to have notes? Is that how podcasts work?
Probably. I imagine they have talking points.
I mean, if it's like an interview, it's a talking point.
Yeah, I guess.
Are we really interviewing ourselves?
Oh, it's going to be pretty personal, I imagine.
You imagine. We say as if we have no plan whatsoever.
We do have a plan.
We do. But this is the first episode, so it's going to feel clunky.
Very clunky.
I mean, that's the allure of it, right? It's like cute, kind of like...
Listen to the train wreck happen.
Yeah, it's like the Sundance Festival of movies, but in terms of podcasts.
Is that right?
Yeah, like low budget.
Hey, this closet setup is pretty schmancy. We have professional microphones.
Yes, that I got in my undergrad like 10 years ago.
And my wedding dress is padding.
Yep, and our comforter.
Yep.
As another piece of padding.
It's pretty legit.
And like, you know, the tens of thousands of dollars in my undergrad degree that allows me to understand a little bit about audio engineering.
And this is how we landed here, is your undergraduate degree prepared you to have a
low budget podcast.
A low budget podcast. Congratulations. How do you feel about yourself?
Well, don't therapize me right now. Therapist.
Welcome to Living L.U.N.A, where two therapists therapize each other
and roast each other constantly
in a closet.
Two queer therapists roast each other constantly in a closet.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
So this first episode was supposed to be about why we picked the name Living L.U.N.A.
Look at us having an agenda.
Yeah. We had an agenda, and then you were like, we're just going to start recording. And I was like, wait, what? I was not prepared for this with my ADHD brain.
Usually your ADHD brain likes you to be more spontaneous, though.
No.
No?
No, I like the concept of spontaneity, but in practice, I prefer to be organized because otherwise you end up with train wrecks.
True. This is true. Because in practice and in theory, I like to be structured.
And this is why our entire fridge and all of our cabinets are labeled with a label maker.
Mm-hmm. It's the best.
It's a little excessive, but that's fine.
Hey, no judgment here.
Yes. And back to Living L.U.N.A. That is what this podcast is all about.
Yep. Living without judgment towards, like, just being weird. Because there's so many times in, like, social norms that just want us to, I don't know, live what's considered normal. And then if you're not that, people judge you. And then we worry about the judgment, even though their judgment literally has nothing to do with our happiness.
Yep. And that is why the acronym is Loving Unashamed and Normalizing Authenticity, L.U.N.A.
Because we like acronyms and puns here.
We do.
Yep.
I really like acronyms.
Mm-hmm. And if I get into my creative spirit, I will like puns as well. Like, bring them into the show.
I mean, if you don't pun at least once an episode, we have failed at a key task.
At least punts an episode.
Oh, here we go.
I had to get that one out of the way so that, like, you know, I have at least met my quota so I don't feel the pressure near the end of the episode.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, like, that's what'll end up happening is, like, at the very beginning of the episode, I'll meet my quota, and then, you know, maybe we'll have a few more puns in there, but it'll be because it's less pressure that I'll just... It'll be more authentic punning.
I see.
Because at the end of the episode, if I feel pressure to meet the quota, I will make something definitely not work, and I will be ashamed at my punning inability.
There's no shame here.
True.
That's the point.
True.
I mean, okay, there's gonna be shame here, but we're gonna air it out. We're gonna talk about it.
Yeah. Because shame exists.
Shame's always going
There's
to
no
exist.
shame to have shame.
Indeed.
Shameception.
Shameception. Good old Brene Brown taught us that. If you don't know Brene Brown, then you need to know Brene Brown. Because
and if you're a therapist listening to that and they're like, oh, gosh, they're talking about Brene Brown. All therapists love Brene Brown. Why? I mean, she has some valid points. Like, look her up. Like,
yeah. I mean, I'm not as into Brene Brown as you are. I think she's wonderful.
Yeah.
And has a lot of great ideas. But she's not my go-to source for all wisdom.
Yeah. I don't, like, reference her every time I talk to my clients. But, like, I definitely, like, the concept of authenticity, like, is the main point of our podcast and is what caused us to become who we are, like really hone in into ourselves, like, currently, and what's inspired us to make this podcast, because we're like, we know what it's like to not live in our authenticity, and we thought that was what we wanted, but now that we're living more authentically, we're like, yeah, we need to advocate for that.
So, speaking of inspirations for the podcast, I wanted to do a shout out to Reverend Sandy in our first episode, because we've been talking about doing a podcast for probably a year now.
Yeah.
It's definitely been something we've tossed around quite a bit.
Our neurodivergent brain would be like, we should do a podcast. And it's kind of like, you know, when you talk to, like, your adult friends and you're like, we should hang out. And then you never do. It felt like that.
Adulting is just the lack of being able to ever schedule time with other adults.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm free on Fridays and Saturdays. And they're like, cool, that's the only time I work. Awesome.
So this actually came up recently at church, Unity, with Reverend Sandy, where I asked for prayers for how to help us launch our business a little bit more. And she said, I see a podcast in your future. And I was like, that's funny. So here we are. I think it's only been 2 weeks since that service. Yeah. And we got our shit together.
Yeah, we freaking cranked it out. Like, yeah. I just remember us bringing it up like a year ago. And I was like, I am in no space to, like, commit my brain power to thinking about a podcast.
And, you know, that's something to touch on even briefly right now, is how many people right now are having creative ideas but just don't have the spoons or the internal resources to do it, because we've been living in a pandemic for going on 2 years now.
Yep.
You know, I opened my private practice therapy office 2 years ago in March, and then 2 weeks later, we were
hit.
We were hit, and that office closed down immediately, and all of my business visions kind of went out the window.
Yep.
At that moment. You know, I thought I was going to be doing in-person services and sand tray therapy and doing holistic integrative health at the Float Center where I had my office, and that just completely left the building.
Yep.
Left the country.
Yep.
Left the planet.
Yep.
Shot off into space.
It did.
So, normalizing that it's okay for plans to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, for sure. Like, a lot of people, and especially, like, neurodivergent people in terms of, like, projects. Like, we are so, like, one of the stereotypes is, like, having hundreds of unfinished projects.
I fit that stereotype, though, is the problem. But, you know, before I came into this closet here, yeah. I drew a card while you were setting up the microphones. Tosha Silver's, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the deck right now.
It's okay.
Wild Offering deck, I believe it's called.
We'll link it in the chat once we figure out how
in
to
the chat.
Oh, I know. We'll link it
in the chat.
Once we figure out all of the proper podcast lingo, we'll be like, link it in our description box. I've listened to enough Brene Brown podcasts for me to know that's how it's said.
But I drew a card right before coming in here, and it was actually divine timing.
Ooh.
And it was basically saying, like, things are meant to happen in their own time. So...
Wow. Look at that. Heckin' connection.
Heckin' connection.
Connection.
Heck.
Heck.
We like to yell heck.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing thing. So whenever we make a good point or something gets us excited, if we, yell heck.
Heck.
The heck, that's what it means.
Yeah. It was by Safrianna's partner Ariel who like kind of led us to that the most. Like, I think we kind of did it a little bit on our own, but then like when we lived with her for a year, like it just became so ingrained in our vocabulary that
well, there's a cute little card game called Heck.
There
we would play that, and when we were living with her and her husband, that would kind of be like the call through the house would just be a chorus of heck.
Yeah.
Just echoing hecks.
Yep.
So
Echoing.
Man, you're on fire.
I am.
Already.
I am, right? There are certain words that, like, if I have it in my brain, I can just find puns for it. Like, the word pun can be punned with a lot of things. And then...
Sure can.
And then, like, if you ever take me to a pho place, I will pun that forever. Forever.
Well.
Yep.
So... Is my role in this podcast going to be the circle back? So now we're going to circle back to the name of the podcast here.
It can be. I mean, I do love to run off on tangents.
I mean, we both
technically do. I mean, I can bring us back too, but
we're establishing our mode here.
Our roles.
Our roles.
Yeah.
You're the sound director and the punster.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the wheezy laugher.
The wheezy laugher.
I don't know what my role is.
You're the inspiration. You are
the creative director.
The creative director, yes.
Schmancy.
Yes.
I like to be extra.
You are.
That's a fun tangent story. Is how we came to embrace my extraness.
Is that right?
I don't know if we should go down that path right now. Totally off topic.
Well, we can... The beautiful thing about podcasts and me having audio engineering abilities is we can do the tangent. We can see how long the podcast is due to the tangent. And then I can add myself saying, if you'd like to listen to this tangent, please go onto our Patreon that we will create later. And then you can listen to said tangent because we don't have time right now.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So... definitely this is going to be a community effort, I think, to kind of hone in. Can I like move this microphone more this way?
You can.
Okay.
You can back up a little bit. Yeah, you don't have to.
I'm tenderly touching it.
Wow. Should I take a picture of that so we can place it in our Patreon?
Are people into microphones?
Living Luna After Dark.
The microphone section.
Yep.
Well, anyway. So, how I got the extra title.
Yeah. How are you extra?
Oh, I'm so extra. It's
Yeah.
mainly around decoration.
Yep.
But we were living in a townhouse. Ken is making a face.
I am
thinking
because
back.
because of my puns.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I was trying to find the pun between extra and decoration, and I was like, dextration.
Too hard.
It was too hard. Yeah.
Too hard.
Yep.
So we had just wrapped up living with a not so great situation, and we're trying to kind of rebrand the space. So I decided to paint every single room.
So we have to preface this with saying that this was a townhouse under a lease, and this was one of the things where we asked for forgiveness rather than permission. So we went. So after we like decided on all of the paints and painted the house, I went over to the leasing office and was like, "Hi, I would like to fill out a paper regarding the paint." So I'll pause that there for Safrianna to explain kind of like how our townhouse was painted.
So it was a standard 2-story townhouse. Enter through the front door, you're in the living room, and then it had sort of a dining room that was blended in with the living room. It was basically just pillars separating it. A kitchen, a downstairs half bathroom, and then 2 full bathrooms upstairs and 3 bedrooms. And again, we painted every room. So the downstairs living room was pastel, like sky blue.
Yeah.
The dining room was a dark, I think it was called tanzanite blue, like almost a sapphire with a hint of purple.
Yeah.
And then lemon yellow on the pillars. Mm-hmm. And then the kitchen was more of a pastel lemon yellow. Mm-hmm. Bathroom was violet.
Well, like lavender violet.
Yeah. The boys' room. So we have 2 cats that I'm sure we will talk about. The boys. So the boys always have their own room, Quasi and Bane, because they're our children.
Yep.
So their room was that violet color. Then
that was the first room that we painted.
It was, to get it all ready for their coming home. The guest bedroom was red and like tea with milk in it. Yeah. I think it was called tea room.
I like how you used the word red first. So like the tea with milk was the main. So we're all about like accent rooms, accent colors. So we were like, okay, we're gonna do like the tea color for the main part of the house, and then we're gonna do, or the main part of the room, and then we're gonna do 2 big triangles in the corners that are red.
Yeah, like almost a blood red.
Yeah,
because it's pretty vibrant.
It was.
But then then the hall bath was like neon green.
Yeah, like if succulents were
neon.
If succulents were on crack.
And then the bedroom took the cake, the master bedroom, because it was pastel pink with a wall with 6 different shades of teal and pink. And making like a grid pattern, like
stained glass,
stained glass geometric triangle shapes. And then the bathroom in there was like cantaloupe neon.
Like if cantaloupe and salmon and a glow stick had a child.
One of our friends is very color sensitive, also neurodivergent, and can get sensory overloaded. And when she walked in and saw that bathroom, like, she needed to leave, and I felt so bad because I didn't realize it was going to elicit that kind of reaction. So side note, if you are going to have common areas with friends who, fortunately that bathroom wasn't a common area, but if you're going to paint your home and you have neurodivergent friends, consider painting more muted colors or earth tones.
Or like dark. Yeah.
Because that was a whole thing. Even my mom was like overwhelmed when she saw it. She immediately called my younger brother to show him on the camera.
And then I brought the paperwork back from the like fast forward now to the leasing office, back to where I was, we paused. And I brought the paperwork back and they're like, please give us the name of the color you were planning to paint the house. And I was like, well, I guess we have to give them this key ring of 24 different colors, and took the key ring over.
Literally, it wasn't quite a key ring. It was a safety pin that we had stuck through the corner of all the papers, so it made like a little key ring, and I still have it, and you can like splay it out. There's so many colors.
And if you want to look at it, just visit our Patreon.
Oh my gosh.
I have no idea if we're actually going to have one of those, but it'll be in the description box.
Now we have to.
I know, yeah. It'll be fine. It'll just be like 50 cents a month. It's fine. But yeah, so I like went over there, and I think this was like one of my first times, because like I was working through a lot of like self-worth stuff and like social anxiety stuff at that time. And I remember like Safrianna having work that day, and I didn't have work that day, and so she kind of like asked me to do that, and I went over to the leasing office, and like the sheer amount of like irritation that they had, like I was so proud of myself for like standing firm and being like, we already painted the place, here's the stuff, and they were like, well, it's going to cost thousands of dollars for us to repaint it, and I'm like, don't worry, we'll paint it ourselves back to white, which I did.
That was a group effort. We had like 6 people come in and help paint it with kills.
Yep.
But
we got some of our deposit back at the end.
We did, exactly. It did not, in fact, cost thousands of dollars. But yes, moral of the story is I'm extra and I like to break rules.
I mean, when we got this house, like you immediately were like, we are going to like
paint all the rooms.
Paint all of the rooms, all of the like door frames, and like
that died real quick
when we did it with the living, because the living room took literally forever.
Yeah.
Because we were like, oh, and they have these in placed bookshelves that we're also going to paint, and that took forever. And so then we were like, okay, we're gonna keep like the chair rails. I've
muted my extraness a little bit since we've moved in. I'm divine timing. It will happen in the right time.
Yeah, and like your extraness is also based off of like, you know, energy and time as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how it is with like most things that we like want and need. Like if we really want to do something or really need something, it depends on like the resources that we have available. Both mentally, emotionally, and like financially, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, paint's expensive, especially since we've discovered that there's a mass conspiracy with the paint companies where they have totally, you know, measured the average room, and then they make the paint cans just slightly too small to cover the entire room, so you end up having to go buy a second gallon because you're not really sure if a quart's going to do it.
Yeah, because a quart is like so tiny.
This isn't a real conspiracy, but we like to pretend it is because that's happened in every single room we've painted.
Yep. I mean, is it like, are we actually like, you know, will this turn into a conspiracy theory podcast where we're just like, this isn't actually a conspiracy theory, but we've experienced this enough time that we are pretty sure it is.
We're gonna vent about capitalism here.
Oh yes,
that needs to be an episode.
It needs to be a series.
That's where we're gonna get my other partner Justin in here.
Yep.
Interview him about capitalism, and
I mean, we won't even interview him. We just say the word capitalism and then
put a mic in front of him.
Yep, and then have him talk about it. Well, I'll have to crank up the mic till 11 because he a quiet speaker.
He's a soft boy.
Yeah. Speaking of authenticity and like saying the words partners lots of times, do you want to like kind of talk about relationship styles real quick so people kind of know what they're getting into?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should definitely give a little bit of an introduction about ourselves personally.
Oh, right. Like we just dove right in and had a conversation. Hello, listener. We're just having a conversation with you about random shit,
and you don't have any clue who we are unless you personally know us. Though, honestly, this first episode, you know, probably is going to be mostly listened to by people that do know us, to be fair.
Until, like, of course, we'll get a giant gathering of people who just want to listen to queer therapists, people.
Shooting the shit.
Yeah.
Being authentic. Juicy. Living that juicy life.
that juicy authenticity.
I used to go to this yoga studio, and well, it wasn't really a yoga studio. It was sort of a meditation center. Yeah, we're tangenting.
No. I am laughing because like this is the neurodivergent aspect. Is like you. I'm noticing like when you explain something, like I was like, oh, a key ring of paint samples, and you're like, well, it wasn't actually a key ring of paint. It was a safety pin that acted as a key ring.
These details are important.
They are. And then you were like, but like it's not really a yoga studio, but it's like a meditation center, and like that like sort of thing we notice with people. And like in terms of authenticity, sometimes like if we notice them, we're like, oh, that's cute that you do that, and people will get really like, oh, it's a thing that I do, and people like get mad at me for it. And it's like, well, those people are impatient and need to like not be impatient about
chill.
That. Yeah, they need to chill. So, like, I think it's endearing. That's why I was giggling about it.
Well, I'm glad you find it endearing. So meditation studio, and now I'm like, what was I even talking about? This is ADHD. This is how ADHD shows up. My brain's just like flying from thing to thing.
And then if I pause you for long enough, you fly way too... Yep.
Off it goes like a little bird.
Yep.
Burb.
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 We're weird.
Heck. So why in the world was I talking about Rose Ma?
We were talking... Well, it was a tangent because we were talking
about a tangent.
Well, yeah, but then we were talking about, like, relationship stuff.
It'll come back to me, like, in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I guess for now, we'll circle back to
because we haven't, like, introduced ourselves.
Yes, and we're just continuing to roll on.
Yeah. And then we never actually talk about ourselves. Like, we talk about ourselves, like, through these stories, but we don't actually give a actual definition of who we are. So we're just these depersonalized voices talking about random stuff that you don't know how to connect to us about.
Yes. So, hello, I'm Safrianna, and I have ADHD, if that wasn't obvious enough.
And I am Ikenna, and we're pretty sure I have some, like, combination of autism and ADHD. Neither of us are, like, both of us are therapists, but neither of us have been actually tested yet because those are expensive.
And very hard to come by. And there's also a movement right now from a lot of therapists and mental health practitioners in general about allowing self-diagnosis of neurodivergence because it is so hard to access services to validate it. And if that's your experience, then why are you gatekeeping the label?
And, like, if the label is only going to provide you with accommodation, why can't we just provide people accommodation when they need it, no matter what their diagnosis is?
Right. Yeah. And again, with ADHD and autism and neurodivergence, there just needs to be an understanding that there are a lot of people out there whose brains are not neurotypical and they don't view the world in a neurotypical way, i.e. me, unable to hold a thought in my head for more than 5 minutes at a time, because literally my brain is... It's the best way I can describe it is it's like there are about 25 TVs playing in my head at all times.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah. And it's like, if I try to hone in on one of the TVs, I'm going to really struggle to remember what the last TV I was looking at was.
Have you ever seen, like, that, like, it's like a weird optical illusion where they have, like, a grid of, like, white lines that are crisscrossing each other, and they're like, try to find the black dot, and like your eyes, like, it's basic. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. And, like, right now my brain is hyperfixated on the fact that I can't remember why I was talking about the meditation studio, and I'm trying to remember, which is making it hard to focus on anything else.
Yeah. So do you want me to, like, explain who I am while you, like, desperately focus on that, and then
while I sit here with my hands on my temples, trying to think.
The power of the force.
The power of the force.
Indeed. The farce.
The farce. Heck.
Yeah, so I'm Ikenna. I am... How do I describe myself? Okay, so...
You're an adorable, non-binary person.
Yep.
They, them.
They, them. I mean, yes, I'm queer. Monogamish. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm, like, 99% lesbian, and then, like, 1% maybe one day if there's someone that comes into my life. Like, I don't know. Maybe. But it's the same thing with, like, polyamory. Like, I lean more mono, but, like, if there's a connection there that's, like, lower maintenance, that's, like, I currently have a queer platonic partner, and, like, it's more romantic than other friendships, so I consider myself in that poly field, but I don't practice it as often. Like, it's not like an innate lifestyle like it is for Safrianna.
Indeed. And I still don't remember what... I'm like, what did I do at that studio? I meditated.
Good.
That's what I did.
Okay.
Why did I have a story about that?
I don't
It's
know.
going to infuriate me for the rest of my life,
Well,
y'all.
what we're gonna do is like we're gonna have an episode where like that yoga meditation story, where you have it, and we're gonna be like, y'all, go back to episode 1 on minute 40 and be like, yo.
Lort.
So
Me.
I mean, I have more things to say, but we'll start with those identifying qualities, and then we can talk about other things about us.
So I'm Safrianna. Term-wise, I don't quite resonate with non-binary the same way Ikenna does, but I exist on a spectrum from agender to hyperfemme, and I kind of slide around on that spectrum. I am very polyamorous, excuse me. Polyam, because poly refers to Polynesian usually, just as a little side note there. But polyam has been a part of my life since as long as I remember a dating history, so it's definitely more ingrained. I think literally the first time I had a relationship, I ended up with a second one shortly thereafter.
And your relationship history started like in your
early teens
versus my relationship history started in my early 20s.
Technically, my first real relationship was when I was 11. Yeah. And it was my first lesbian relationship.
Wow.
And that's, I'm sure, gonna come up in a later episode, because we were going to talk about queer journeys.
If there are things that we bring up in this episode that you're like, that reminds me of a topic that I would love for you two to talk about, feel free to let us know.
Yes, let us know. That one is on the list. But yeah, first lesbian relationship and last lesbian relationship for many years, because I was repressed due to trauma.
Yep.
But anyway, so the polyamory has never really gotten repressed in me, even though I have faced stigma from it. But currently I have Ikenna, we mentioned Justin, and we mentioned Ariel. So my two other partners.
Yep.
And then, because we're all about authenticity here, I also have a BDSM MS relationship with another person. And I'm not going to out members of that community because, you know, that's a far more personal choice. But, you know, I think it's important for us to be honest about those things here, because we are all about authenticity. That's literally in our acronym.
It is.
So we're going to live by that. And we want to normalize that there are way more people living these kinds of lifestyles and relationships than I think anyone really realizes.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like, it's like one thing to, like, yeah, we are more privileged over the fact that we are white, and like we can hide and mask those aspects of us that we like that could potentially cause us harm or judgment or anything related to that if we're in the wrong communities. But at the same time, it's like we need to, like, also if we live our truth and show people that it's not, like, if it's between consensual adults who have all agreed to the different standards of those different terms and lifestyles, like, you know, that's up to them in the end.
Right. And it doesn't hurt anyone.
Nope.
I mean, as long as it is consensual and talked about. And, you know, I know we will get into toxic relationship dynamics and boundaries and things like that in future episodes. That's definitely something that we've talked about. But, you know, we're just two pretty regular, weird people. Heck. that live our lives, and we do good things, even though we are quote unquote different in a lot of ways from the standard typical American, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, and the thing is like, we also take responsibility for, like, due to our pasts regarding, like, trauma and other stigmatized ideas that we were brought up with, you know, we make mistakes too. And we talk about that as well. And so we're good people, but we also aren't perfect people by any means.
Yeah. And, I believe that all people are inherently good, and it's really just trauma that covers that up.
Yeah.
So yet another topic.
So many topics.
So many topics.
We basically have a podcast set for the next several seasons.
I don't know about several seasons, but at least a good solid season.
What do you mean by only one season?
We've got like 8 ideas written down.
Written down?
I've never listened to a podcast.
Oh.
Okay, I've listened to episodes of podcasts, but I've never listened to a podcast.
So if you have ADHD and only listen to one episode of our podcast, that is okay.
Let's normalize that.
Yeah. You don't have to be a, dedicated listener that listens to all of our podcasts one after the other. If there's a certain topic that relates to you and you want to only listen to that, do that.
Indeed. Yeah. Because I don't know. I've always struggled with.
Meanwhile, I hyper-focus on certain hosts and I'm like, wow,
I love them.
Brene Brown is perfect. Esther Perel is amazing. Also, if you ever want to listen to mental health podcasts or just Brene Brown's mostly about authenticity.
Yeah.
And then Esther Perel is a couples therapist, and I highly recommend.
Though shout out to Glennon Doyle, because I really liked the episode of We Can Do Hard Things.
Yeah. That
one of my clients recommended.
Yeah. We're not sponsored by any of these people, but oh my gosh, we love all of you. Thank you.
So, you said you wanted to say a little bit more about you.
Oh, yeah. So, identity things, yeah, that's one thing. But it's both of us, you're a therapist. I'm in grad school to become a therapist. So, the thing about living authentically can be hard, too, as therapists because, we want to show that we have our shit together.
Spoiler alert. If a therapist tells you that they have their shit together, run.
Yeah.
Because they don't. That's another podcast topic we're going to talk about eventually is fellow therapists.
Oh, no. And if the therapist that, if we bring up hypotheticals and you relate to that as a therapist, I am so sorry.
And
do we need to, do the whole, Law and Order thing where, these are fictional, these
Probably.
don't relate to anyone?
Probably.
Yeah.
Though, I'm sure I will tell some stories at some point about some people. But I won't say names.
And I'm sure that we'll also, be guilty of certain aspects.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, we are human.
Yeah. But yeah, I just in terms of interests, in terms of tangents that we might go down, and the fact that we're two different types of therapists. You're mostly trauma therapists with mostly adults and late teens, and I'm mostly and LGBTQ, which we both work with, but I like to work with kids and teens and a few adults, but mostly around neurodivergence and play therapy and figuring out what your needs are. Because oftentimes we don't advocate for that. We don't even recognize that we have needs because everyone's from my point of view, the reason why you're freaking out is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's okay, well then maybe I should never ever think of that as a need ever again.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Most of my therapy is me giving pep talks to people and calling them out.
Yep.
But also a lot of trauma work and being gentle and understanding.
I call them out, but I'm also gentle.
See, this is my Gemini nature.
Oh, yes. Okay, so this is another thing.
I am so woo-woo, y'all.
It's bad, yeah. Bad in the best way possible. Safrianna is a Gemini, 150%.
Shouldn't we say 200%? Because of 100% of each side.
Oh, yes, true. And then I'm a Pisces sun and moon.
Yes, double Pisces.
Yeah, so emotions is a thing.
Double the cry.
Double the cry. Yeah, we usually say oh, do you need a Pisces cry? Because I'll get emotional about something and then
in a loving way.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, so that's always fun to talk about. But yeah, so So those are our signs. If you want to run after hearing that,
There's a whole client story right there too.
about,
About a client finding out I was a Gemini and being like, "Ooh, I don't know if I want you as my therapist." And I was like, "Damn,
yep,
yikes."
and that's totally fine.
Indeed, client choice.
Yeah. So so like in terms of interests, like, due to neurodivergence, like we hyperfixate on things sometimes. So it's like
Minecraft.
yes, Minecraft. Oh my gosh. And Minecraft is a beautiful thing in terms of like, that can be a whole other set of like talking about Minecraft, because it's just like, it is a great way to learn social skills and how people work socially in a safe environment of, this game that's relatively peaceful. And like,
Have you played on our servers when we're getting attacked by like 8 creepers and 25 zombies
yeah,
all
but
at
I
the
have a
same time?
sword at that point, so it's okay.
I see. Okay. All right.
But then like, as a kid, like, when you get these intense interests in things, a lot of people are like, oh, are you planning on getting a job in that? And then if you're not, you're like, maybe I shouldn't have this interest then. Like, I am deeply interested in like space and like string theory and those concepts, but I'm not a rocket scientist, and like I'll never be, and that's fine. Like I can still have these space books and like delve into them and whatnot. And like both of us really like Star Wars and sci-fi stuff. Yep.
Ahsoka is bae.
Ahsoka is Safrianna's favorite character, and Bo-Katan is my favorite, mostly due to the fact that Katie Sackhoff plays Bo-Katan, and I fell in love with her.
Obsessed.
Yeah, I fell in love with her when she played Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica. And then we both like tabletop RPGs and D&D, although we never have time to do that.
And here we are making a podcast.
Yeah.
Priorities.
Indeed. And then we enjoy like MMOs. So we like Guild Wars.
Guild Wars 2.
Guild Wars 2. Yep. That's also really fun. Again, if you're a Final Fantasy 14 fan, like, because everyone I talk to is, I do need to get on board, because it is apparently a really amazing story after you get past level 60. But I'm just sad over the first like chunky bits.
I hate the beginning to the point where, because ADHD, I cannot power through it. I'm like, the writing here is trash, and I just can't do it. So if they have like a level 60 scroll, like in Guild Wars, where you can get like a level 80 scroll and just bump your character all the way to max level so you can access all of the story, I would give it another try.
Yeah, for sure.
Get on board Final Fantasy 14. Maybe it's there and I just don't know, because the beginning of the game made me cringe so hard that I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I'll have to ask. Because again, I have a ton of people that in my life that do play it.
So other identifying factors that are definitely going to come up here are our spiritual views.
Yeah.
So I'm very much involved in Unity, which I have fondly personally labeled. I don't know that Unity would go along with this, but I've kind of personally identified it as if Christianity and Earth spirituality had a baby.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful and lovely, and it's all about authenticity and accepting different identities. I think it's the first church I've ever walked into and mentioned having more than one partner and did not get blinked at. I actually remember my very first conversation with the Reverend was essentially me asking, like, is it okay that I'm queer? And her just being like, of course, like, we welcome everyone here.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, is like, we can talk about, like, in terms of religion, like, I grew up in a Methodist church, and like they've slowly reformed into learning more about queer identities. And I was a music director at a Lutheran church that was like so open about, like, had many gay couples that were like older. And I was just like, wow, I didn't know that could be a thing. But it's also like, even if like the whole sect of the church, like if the Lutheran church in general wasn't like okay with it, but like just the church that you're in like makes their own rules basically. So it's like, I'm a part of a Methodist church now that I work for, and like their pastors have straight up defended my like queerness to other people before.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
And, the next thing is I think spiritual communities, Christian communities, etc., are going to need to get on board with non-nuclear families and the fact that there are a lot of different relationship styles.
I mean, that's why, like, so many monogamous people who are in, like traditional Christian relationships, like, will stay with toxic partners because of the concept of divorce being a sin.
Right.
I mean, that's slowly moving away now, but, like, that is still the reasoning why some people stay.
I have several friends who have gone through that. So yeah, whole hour-long conversation at least on that, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. Thank you for helping us, like, rubber duck this whole situation.
That's basically what this episode was we were just gonna talk at microphones and practice, but actually post it.
Yeah.
Because we're all about being authentic. So we're just gonna flaunt this
cluster
dumpster fire.
Yeah.
I guess hot dumpster fire is a bit redundant.
It's fine.
But whatever. I still haven't remembered why I was bringing up the meditation.
Is that going to bother you every time?
It's going to bother me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'll bring it up to you every time we start the podcast. I'll be like, so, the meditation room.
I'm going to have to re-listen to everything we've said to see if I can follow my brain to where I was going with it. Mm-hmm. Because it's going to drive me crazy.
Yep.
Episode 2 is just going to be all about
the meditation room,
the meditation studio, and whatever it was that I needed to say there.
Or it'll still be you being like, I still can't remember.
ADHD. What in the ADHD fuck, as I say.
Indeed.
Whenever I have a moment. P.S. If you don't like swear words, don't listen to this podcast.
Or if you don't want your kids to hear curse words. I mean, we're also going to be talking about, like, sexuality and, like, relationship styles. So
literally living Luna is just living Luna after dark, because you shouldn't play it for your kids, probably.
Yeah. Or
unless you're very open with your children, they're late teens.
I mean, we can also put a warning in the description and be like, hello, this was a more PG related, or hello, this is more PG-13.
I mean, one of our episodes that we've already talked about doing is boundaries with children. So
yeah. So
if
it has children in the title, I mean, well, with our tangent minds, we might start talking about kids, and then we'll be like, and here's a really risque topic, and then we'll
here's
be like,
how kids are made.
I mean, sometimes kids need to hear that. Like, yep. And there's so many, and that could be another topic as well. Like, how did you learn that kids were made, and, like, how did I learn, and, like, how did people teach this, like, quote unquote stigmatized topic, especially to assigned female at birth, which we will call AFABs. Like, they are, like, for some reason, that story that's being told to people when they're younger, like, how do you go about that?
Oh boy, that's a whole bunch of, we're gonna trauma trigger warning before that one comes up.
Yep.
Yeah, so if we get into any really heavy topics, I think that we'll flag trigger warnings,
and we will probably be like we'll do a before the episode being like, this episode contains blah 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 around this time.
Yeah, because I mean, I have a pretty extensive trauma history that I'm open and authentic about. I don't give all of the details to anyone that's not personally in my life, but being able to talk about how I overcame a lot of that, I think, is healing for me and for others when they realize, like, oh my God, Safrianna is functional now.
Yeah.
And actually living like a fairly normal in
quote unquote
giant air quotes there, life, and being successful-ish.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like, if you're struggling to, like, get through your trauma and, like, still are struggling with that stuff, like, it's a long journey.
Yes. I mean, it took me 6 years of hardcore therapy to even begin to put a dent in that, so.
And it's hard, too, because it's like, when you're looking at that sort of stuff, like, oftentimes, like, when you're looking at the videos of people being like, I just lost 50 pounds. Look at my before picture. It's like, rarely do you see them posting the before picture when they're in the midst of the work. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, I get it. Like, you know, my past self would be probably frustrated with me currently with being like, oh, of course you're like excitedly saying all of this stuff and that you're okay, because you are.
Right.
And so it's like, I get that that can be a thing too, is like, we're kind of in a better place, but we couldn't make this podcast, you know, a few months ago, because, let alone a few years ago, because of where we were emotionally, mentally, physically, resourcefully. We were still figuring all of that out, and we still are figuring things out too. Right. But we're just in a space that we can finally come together and
normalizing authenticity.
Just nail it in there.
Yep. And
living na.
Living na. So yes, this is Living Luna, where we talk about
just plug it.
Loving unashamed and normalizing authenticity.
Yep, this is Safrianna's extraness. Need to plug the label because she's so proud of the acronym.
Well, okay, so the whole L.U.N.A thing, we do at some point, as we're probably winding down to time here.
Oh, we are, yeah.
So our last name is Luna.
Yeah.
But it's Lughna, like the holiday Lunasa, because we are extra like that.
Yep.
And we, being queer, wanted to have a last name that was not a giant hybrid of our last names. So we just came up with another one. And we like moons. Luna, Lughna, does not actually mean moon. It means autumn. But
we also like that season, so...
Yeah, and we love the word Luna, but we didn't want our last name to be Luna, L-U-N-A, because that was just a little too extra. So it still sounds the same, but
if your last name is Luna, L-U-N-A, we love your last name. It's not extra, like, and if you chose it for yourself, like, good on you. Like, yes, amazing. It was just not for us.
It was not for... I would go back now, possibly, now that I feel a little bit more secure in myself, and totally own that name.
Yeah.
But paperwork.
Yeah. And then people now call us Lughna sometimes.
Lugnut.
And they call me Ikea sometimes, too. Ikea Lughna.
I get Safrianna,
yeah.
What is the other one that I get a lot?
I just remember Safrianna a lot.
I mean, this is what we get for having
complicated names
that we branded ourselves with.
Yep.
So yeah, that's Living Luna.
Have we figured out how to end the show? Is this just going to be us kind of like, am I going to fade us out or fade myself out, like, while I'm constantly talking, being like, how are we going to end this?
Because yes, because we'll just literally sit in this closet for the next 3 hours and tangent, because...
Probably.
What in the ADHD fuck? But we do have to end it somewhere, so...
I guess.
I hope you enjoyed this wild ride of a first episode.
Yeah, it went everywhere.
It really did. Like, how are you going to describe this episode? You're going to be like, in this episode we talk about, and it's going to be a 15 bullet point list, if not more, of all these topics we jumped around. You know, we're gonna have an agenda next time.
Yeah, hopefully. And the thing is that, like, after writing a bunch of client notes where, like, they have a 45-minute session with me and I'm able to pare it down to like 2 sentences, I feel like, you know, I've learned how to...
We talked about living Luna, loving unashamed, and normalizing authenticity. And our roles in the podcast as me, the role of the wheezy laugher and creative director, and Ikenna as
the audio engineer and
they're
punster.
So unsure of themselves right now. So we're just gonna sign off, or we're gonna keep staring at each other in this closet. We now need to leave the closet. We're gonna come out of the closet.
Huh. I know. I think the irony of the fact that we're doing this in a closet, like, we're so authentic that we chose to go back into a closet to talk about authenticity.
So that we could come out of the closet again.
After we're done talking about it.
Which really is this podcast in general, because we're just putting it all out there.
Yeah. Inside the closet and then taking it out into the world.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Time to leave the closet, y'all.